Catherine will speak on my behalf. Mrs. Meghan Markle has repeatedly written to the palace seeking our intervention in the Epstein matter, but, like Andrew, she must face her own consequences.
The final order did not arrive with a public ceremony, a televised speech, or the sound of applause. It came inside a sealed royal folder, placed before King Charles in a private palace room. One signature changed everything. By formally enforcing the 1917 letters patent against Meghan, the monarch stripped her of every remaining HRH right connected to the crown. And when the decision reached California, the silence was almost more devastating than the decree itself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles read the final paragraph twice. The 1917 letters patent, a royal legal instrument defining who may hold princely rank and the style of royal highness, now carried a brutal purpose. This was not a warning or temporary restriction. It was a final constitutional separation, cutting away Meghan's right to royal representation, ceremonial precedence, palace recognition, and any claim that reconciliation could restore what had been removed. The king kept one hand above the signature line. Harry's face entered his thoughts first, followed by Archie and Lilibet, the grandchildren who would feel consequences they had never shaped. He knew the decree would protect the monarchy's authority, yet he understood its private cost. Duty demanded clarity. Fatherhood begged for delay. For several seconds, neither side won. Charles removed the cap from his fountain pen. He signed, placed it beside the folder, and told his waiting private secretary, "Issue it exactly as written." The aide closed the document without speaking. That small sound carried the weight of a door shutting across an already divided family. Meghan received the notice in Montecito. She read the opening sentence, stopped, and lowered herself into a chair. Anger did not come first. Disbelief did. The palace had not merely limited HRH, meaning the formal style, Her Royal Highness. It had removed the institutional signs that once connected her to the crown, even while she lived beyond the working royal household. The shock deepened when she reached the final clauses. Palace teams had already revised protocol sheets, security instructions, guest classifications, correspondence templates, and ceremonial lists. Her place had changed before the world had been told. The decision was not approaching. It had already taken effect. Harry learned last. His father had acted without calling him, warning him, or giving him one final chance to respond. Shock hardened into betrayal. He demanded an answer from the man who had signed the order. But the signature was only the beginning, because behind the legal language stood three people whose private wounds were about to collide with the full force of the crown. To the public, the decree appeared to concern titles, protocol, and constitutional authority. Inside the family, it meant something far more painful. Charles saw a boundary that had become necessary. Meghan saw an attempt to erase her place in history. Harry saw his father choosing the institution over him once again. None of them entered this conflict without scars, and none could escape what the decision revealed about where their loyalties truly rested. Harry paced across the room, then turned toward the table where the notification lay. The Duke of Sussex, the title given to him by the crown after marriage, now felt less like an honor and more like a reminder of loss. He asked why his father had not called before making the order final. Meghan listened, but her silence carried its own accusation. Meghan placed the notification between them. For her, HRH recognition was not decorative. It proved she had entered the House of Windsor as a senior royal, served beside the family, and held a place history could not erase. She kept one hand on the page when Harry reached for it and asked whether William had known. Harry could not answer. That hesitation changed the room. She withdrew her hand and turned away, leaving him staring at the royal seal, the official mark showing the document carried the monarch's authority. He understood the decree might reach far beyond a title. It could shape invitations, family ceremonies, palace communications, and even how Archie and Lilibet were presented in future royal settings. Charles felt the same danger from the opposite side. The king believed the monarchy could not survive an unresolved arrangement in which someone outside official service still carried the symbolic authority of the crown. A working royal, meaning a family member who performs public duties for the monarch, answered to palace rules. Meghan no longer did. Yet every restriction would also wound his son. William's involvement deepened that wound. Through a documented message from a palace official, Harry learned that the prince had been briefed before the signature reached the page. The future king had not merely heard afterward. He had stood inside the process while the Sussex position was permanently reduced. That discovery made the betrayal feel deliberate. Harry stopped pacing. His anger became colder and focused. He sent an urgent message demanding a private call with Charles and rejected the palace offer to speak through officials. He wanted no secretary, lawyer, or prepared explanation between father and son. Yet the decree had not been born from one argument or one angry morning. It had been triggered by a precise moment the palace could neither dismiss nor forgive. Every royal rupture has a moment that later becomes impossible to ignore. For Charles, it was not an interview, a memoir, or an old family accusation. It was a private Commonwealth reception at St. James's Palace, where a carefully negotiated boundary was broken in front of diplomats, aides, and members of the royal household. What Meghan said that evening lasted less than a minute, but it transformed years of tension into a constitutional question the king could no longer postpone. Meghan had entered the reception carrying years of buried frustration. The Commonwealth, a voluntary association of nations linked by shared history and cooperation, mattered because royal appearances there carried the authority of the crown. Since she and Harry had stepped away from working duties, the palace had allowed family ties to continue, but barred them from using royal status as independent power. The tension had already spread through smaller disputes. Invitations, public introductions, branding, seating order, and ceremonial precedents had become battlegrounds. Ceremonial precedents meant the formal order in which royal figures were placed or acknowledged at official events. Meghan believed each restriction reduced her history. Charles believed every exception weakened the monarchy's right to decide who spoke in its name. Then the host introduced Meghan using full HRH styling. She did not correct him. Instead, she addressed the guests and said her royal standing remained a lifelong platform of service beyond palace permission. The sentence was recorded in the official reception transcript, leaving no doubt about how the moment had unfolded. Charles stood across the room and became completely still. The king did not interrupt, but he heard a direct challenge. Meghan felt something different. She believed she was defending years of service that the palace had slowly pushed aside, and her refusal to retreat came from pride, injury, and fear of being erased. Harry called a senior courtier that night. During the recorded conversation, the Duke insisted his wife had spoken personally, not constitutionally. The response was cold. Intention no longer mattered. What mattered was whether the crown still permitted her to speak with royal authority. Charles entered a private side room with William after the reception. He removed his glasses, placed the printed transcript on a narrow table, and tapped Meghan's sentence with one finger. The monarch said, "This cannot remain undefined," while the prince read the words in silence. That same night, Charles ordered legal and constitutional advisors to assess the 1917 letters patent under restricted circulation. Another warning, he decided, would solve nothing. With the trigger recorded and the legal route prepared, he now had to face the son who believed love should have stopped the crown from acting. The call began without greetings. Harry demanded to know whether his father understood what he had done, while Charles listened from behind a closed door with no aides beside him. Years of disappointment, distance, and unresolved grief entered the conversation at once. This was no longer a dispute about royal letters. It was a son asking whether he still mattered, and a king refusing to undo a decision he believed the monarchy could not survive without. Charles had dismissed his staff before answering. The king rejected prepared notes because he did not want lawyers, courtiers, or palace machinery blamed for words he intended to own himself. Harry wanted the decree suspended before publication. His father would explain it, but he would not reopen the order or alter its operative language, the binding words that made the decision legally effective. That refusal mattered because delay might protect the family, while publication would turn private pain into permanent history. Harry accused him of designing a public humiliation. The Duke said removing Meghan's HRH rights would look like an attempt to erase their marriage from royal history and reduce years of service to a mistake the palace now wished to hide. Charles absorbed the accusation, but he answered that marriage could not give anyone permanent authority to invoke the crown while refusing the restrictions attached to it. Harry stood so quickly that a chair scraped backward across the floor. He asked whether Charles was speaking as his father or as the king. On the other end, the monarch closed his eyes and said, "Tonight, I cannot separate the two." Neither man spoke for several seconds, and that silence carried every conversation they had avoided. Then Harry asked the question that changed his anger. Did William approve? Charles paused before confirming that the prince had supported a clear and permanent settlement. The future king believed uncertainty would poison another reign. Harry heard only betrayal. His fury shifted toward the brother who had known before he did. Charles revealed more through the recorded private call. He had delayed enforcement once before, hoping reconciliation might make legal action unnecessary. Meghan's statement at St. James's ended that final period of restraint because, in his view, it challenged the crown's right to decide who represented it. Harry warned that if the decree became public, he would answer it publicly. The king did not raise his voice. He simply said the order had already entered force. Harry ended the call without goodbye. His fury exposed the family wound. But the real power of the decree rested with those who had transformed Charles's private resolve into an order that could not easily be reversed. No royal decree becomes final through emotion alone. Behind Charles's signature stood constitutional advisors, private secretaries, protocol officials, and William, the heir whose support gave the decision its future weight. They had studied every word, every consequence, and every possible challenge. Yet inside that carefully managed process, one uncomfortable truth remained. The order was legally precise because the family itself had become emotionally impossible. Power had stepped in where trust had completely failed. Charles authorized a restricted working circle before dawn. The group included legal advisors, a private secretary, and protocol officials, the staff who decide how royal rank is shown at ceremonies and official events. Their task was narrow but explosive. Apply the 1917 letters patent to Meghan's remaining HRH recognition without changing Harry's birth status or the position of Archie and Lilibet. William supported removing the uncertainty before it reached his future reign. The prince believed an unresolved privilege could become a constitutional crisis later, especially if Meghan continued working independently while still carrying the symbolic authority of the crown. He did not speak with anger. He spoke like an heir already measuring the burden that might one day fall entirely on him. Charles resisted the harshest language. During the final review, the king crossed out phrases that sounded personal and demanded a clear difference between Meghan as a family member and Meghan as a former royal representative. That distinction mattered because he wanted to close institutional doors without pretending blood, marriage, and memory had never existed. The private secretary watched him rewrite one paragraph 3 times. The aide understood what the monarch was trying to do: preserve access to private family occasions while removing HRH precedents, royal representation, palace sponsorship, and any place beside working members of the royal family. Success for the crown meant pain for the father. William entered the study after the legal briefing. Charles asked whether the wording had become too severe. The prince read the revised paragraph, folded the page once, and said, "Uncertainty would be crueler because it would keep the conflict alive for another reign." His answer settled the room. The advisors then confirmed that reconciliation alone could not reverse the order. Restoring Meghan's status would require a new formal royal act and a complete constitutional review. The decision was not designed to bend under emotion. Nothing about the process felt triumphant, even to those convinced it was necessary. Palace staff moved immediately. Seating charts, security categories, communication rules, and invitation language were changed before any public statement existed. Once Meghan's place shifted on paper, the loss would soon appear in rooms, ceremonies, and relationships she had once believed could never be taken away. The first consequences did not arrive through headlines. They appeared quietly. A changed form of address, a revised invitation list, an altered security classification, and a missing position on a ceremonial plan. Each adjustment seemed small on its own. Together they delivered a brutal message. Meghan had not merely lost a disputed style. The palace was removing every practical sign that she still possessed a place within the formal structure of royal life. Meghan received the revised memorial invitation without warning. Her name appeared without royal styling, and after working members she had once preceded. Working royals are family members who carry out official duties for the monarch, and their position now placed a visible line between her former life and her present one. She read the card twice, then set it face down. Harry reacted at once. The Duke wanted to reject the memorial entirely, arguing that attendance would turn them into silent participants in their own humiliation. Meghan resisted, She told him refusal would allow the palace to say they had chosen absence, and that difference mattered, because public memory often followed the simplest version of events, not the most painful truth. The order reached deeper than the invitation. Palace departments were instructed that Meghan could no longer be addressed, seated, announced, or represented with HRH status in any official setting. HRH means Her Royal Highness, a formal style marking close royal rank and public connection to the crown. Private family contact remained possible, but every future appearance would be classified as either a personal visit or attendance by a private citizen. Harry felt the loss becoming practical. Security linked to official royal representation disappeared from Meghan's classification, meaning future protection would depend on purpose, location, and private arrangements. The Sussex office also received written notice that no new correspondence could carry her former royal identifier. Old records could remain. Nothing new could repeat it. Meghan placed the memorial invitation beside the royal notification. She traced the blank space where her former styling would once have appeared, folded the card, and said quietly, "They want me to react." Harry answered that silence would not restore what had been taken. Meghan looked at him and said silence might be the only power she still controlled. She rejected the angry public statement prepared by her team, refusing to give the palace the explosion it expected. Instead, she decided she would speak to Charles herself, without lawyers, advisors, or even Harry shaping the words. This choice would finally belong entirely to her. That quiet decision created the first unexpected shift, because her next conversation would be with the man who had signed her royal identity away. For the first time since the decree, Meghan and Charles spoke without Harry, William, courtiers, or constitutional language standing between them. She did not call to plead for the title. He did not answer to defend every line. The conversation was quieter than their earlier battles, and therefore more dangerous. Stripped of ceremony, they confronted the truth neither side had admitted. Meghan wanted recognition that the crown could no longer give, while Charles wanted loyalty she no longer trusted. Meghan had sent a short personal message asking for 15 minutes without officials or relatives listening. Charles agreed only after making one condition clear: the decree would not be renegotiated. The king placed his briefing papers in a drawer before answering, while she kept her communications team outside the room. Neither side would hide behind prepared language, because this conversation had to belong to the two people carrying its deepest wounds, alone and without witnesses. Meghan spoke first. She told Charles the palace had not simply removed letters before her name. It had confirmed her deepest fear, that she had been welcomed only while she remained useful, quiet, and obedient. HRH, meaning Her Royal Highness, had represented proof that her years inside the monarchy were real. Losing it felt like being edited out of her own history. Charles did not dismiss the pain. The monarch admitted the family had mishandled moments when she felt isolated and unprotected. Yet he said regret could not grant permanent constitutional authority to someone outside royal service. That boundary mattered because the crown could not control its public meaning if private family ties automatically carried official power. Charles then offered a narrow assurance. Meghan could still be welcomed at specific family occasions by personal invitation. She refused to treat private access as payment for public removal. The answer told him she finally understood the separation was complete. Then the conversation changed. Charles said Archie and Lilibet would not be punished for the adults' conflict. Their relationship with him would remain personal, never a bargaining tool in a dispute over titles or loyalty. Meghan's voice broke for the first time. She steadied herself, thanked him for saying it directly, and told him she accepted that the palace door had closed. The king replied, "The official door has. The family door need not." Meghan made one final decision. She would not challenge the decree through a public constitutional battle. Her response would define a life beyond royal recognition, not another war for it. Their private acceptance did not soften the public explosion, however, because by morning the world would see the decree and decide whether it represented necessary discipline or royal cruelty. At 6 o'clock the next morning, the decree escaped the guarded rooms of the palace and entered every home, studio, newsroom, and royal debate in Britain. The argument split almost instantly. Some saw a king finally defending the limits of the crown. Others saw a family using ancient power to settle a modern grievance. Yet one image captured the entire crisis: Meghan's face beneath a headline declaring that her last royal privilege had vanished forever. Buckingham Palace released the statement at dawn. It confirmed that Charles had enforced the 1917 letters patent, a royal legal instrument used to define princely rank and the style of royal highness. Meghan would no longer hold HRH rights, ceremonial precedence, or official royal representation. The decision mattered because it ended the last formal link between her public identity and the authority of the crown. Harry watched the coverage with the television muted. The Duke saw presenters debate whether his father had finally severed the Sussexes from royal life, and the anger that had driven him through the night slowly gave way to exhaustion. Meghan sat nearby, reading each headline in silence, while he struggled to decide whether defending her publicly would deepen the wound. Charles faced a different silence. At breakfast, the king moved through the front pages without speaking. Camilla watched him stop over a photograph of Harry and understood what the palace statement could not show. Victory for the monarchy had brought the monarch no relief. The queen consort said nothing, but she remained beside him as the cost became impossible to hide. Outside Buckingham Palace, the argument became public theater. The Daily Chronicle carried a full-width image of Meghan leaving a past royal service beneath the headline, "No longer Her Royal Highness, King signs final order." One woman lifted the paper above the barrier and called the decree overdue. A younger spectator answered that no title was worth destroying a family. Their exchange was broadcast live. The BBC sharpened the moment further. During its morning bulletin, a presenter described the decree as the most definitive separation of a royal spouse from crown authority in the modern reign. The phrase transformed legal wording into a historic verdict. William appeared later at a scheduled engagement. The prince refused to discuss private family matters, but his controlled response showed that the heir supported the decision. Meghan then approved one brief statement. She did not condemn Charles. Instead, she declared that her purpose would no longer depend on royal recognition. When the noise began to settle, the decree's meaning no longer rested with headlines, but with how Charles, Harry, and Meghan chose to live after the crown had spoken.